Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Mahler, occupational therapist, and I am joined by two of my friends who will be introducing themselves in a little bit more detail in just a minute. I'm joined by Kim Clary and Chloe Rothschild, and this is Making Sense of Sensory Part 2. So this is Part 2 of a double session. In Part 1, we offered a lot about sensory and sensory differences or difficulties and how they really significantly impact the ability for autistic people, many autistic people, to function in daily lives. And in this session, we want to take a focus on offering practical strategies. We welcome you to ask questions throughout the session in the chat, as well as if you have sensory strategies that you use yourself or have found helpful for clients or your own child, please feel free to share those ideas in the chat as we move along. So before I turn it over to Kim and Chloe to introduce themselves, we just want to refresh your memory, or maybe you did have a chance to see our first session and where we talked a lot about sensory processing or sensory integration. We talked about 3 different areas that a person can experience differences or difficulties within. We talked about sensory modulation, we talked about sensory discrimination, and we talked about sensory motor. If these are new terms to you, we do invite you to check out that session so that you can learn a little bit more about that and how it impacts daily function. And we also talked a lot, and Chloe and Kim really illustrated this point very nicely. And it was just about how sensory is so much more than helping a person feel more comfortable. It is an essential aspect of almost every single autistic person's supports, that if we want to help them to be successful and thrive in life, we need to understand and support sensory differences. So I believe, Kim, you're going to be reading a little bit more about this fact.
Yeah, my sensory tools aren't a matter of making something more comfortable or comforting to me. It's rather a tool to make it possible to interact within my environment in an efficient, effective, and functional manner. Comfort is not essential to interacting. For example, someone may choose to sit while they eat lunch because it is more comfortable for them than standing, but the person would be able to eat lunch sitting or standing. On the other hand, sensory coping is more akin to a person who is hard of hearing using a hearing aid while listening to a class lecture, or a person who is blind reading a book that is Braille. Without those tools, neither one of those people would be able to take in and interpret the information in a functional way. So my sensory tools and being able to accommodate my sensory needs helps me to be able to function in a more efficient and effective way.
And we have this slide, Kim, about Maslow's hierarchy. Would you like to tie this to your sensory needs?
Yeah, so the first 2, or the bottom 2 things on the pyramid, those are what you need for basic living. So physiological needs and safety needs. Sensory, that's where that comes in. My sensory experiences, Kelly, help me out right here.
Your sensory experiences definitely impact your physiological level, as well as how safe you feel in your environment and within your body.
Right, and they're essential to functioning in order to get to the top part.
Yeah, and so Maslow's hierarchy talks about how you have to address the bottom layers first in order for a person to learn and thrive. And then next, this, I guess, graphic, you could call it, of the central nervous system. And Kim, do you want to talk about how the foundation is the sensory systems?
Yeah, again, in this one, so the foundation are the sensory systems, and those have to be taken into account before you're able to go into higher level thinking, before you're able to do activities of daily living, and before you're able to learn. So you have to take care of those sensory needs before you're able to do the other tasks that are required.
Absolutely. And as we suggested in session 1, these sensory needs are often very misunderstood and unaddressed. And so hopefully this session will inspire and help you understand how to address these needs more successfully. And then Kim, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the dangers of not supporting sensory needs in a robust or comprehensive way?
Yeah, as I was a child, the world around me made little sense. I felt alien, and pictures taken went from being vibrant, carefree, bright, and colorful to being heavy, damp, and stiff. And a lot of that was due to not being able to use my coping strategies. So my natural coping strategies were jumping, rocking, spinning, fidgeting, flapping. And I did those in order to make sense of the world. But well-meaning adults said I looked retarded or I looked babyish. And it wasn't just family members. I had teachers and babysitters tell me that as well. And once they told me that, I stopped and instead I began engaging in self-harm and dissociation in order to tolerate my sensory world. However, as an adult, I had to unlearn many of the unhealthy strategies that had replaced my natural healthy strategies. And ironically, the things that I went back to were the things that I did when I was a kid, that I did naturally, jumping, rocking, spinning.
And those are the things that you use currently to help you successfully engage in your daily life. Is that right?
Yes.
So my sensory difficulties are also more than a dislike or a preference. When my sensory needs are understood and supported, I can connect with myself and others in the ways that I desire. But when they're not, you'll notice a language difference, wouldn't you say, Kelly?
Yes. Like, do you mean like communication-wise? Like
a huge communication language difference, even in the way that, in the words that I'm using, and the way that the words are even coming out. It's a totally different conversation.
Absolutely.
So as you can see in this picture, I've learned ways that help me in ways that I need to succeed, such as having a big corgi giant stuffed animal, because it's that deep pressure, and that's a strategy that I use a lot.
Okay, so now we are going to get into the practical side of things. So we wanted to first mention that when you're using sensory supports, or when a person uses sensory supports, what we're essentially talking about is using them in a way to elicit a specific nervous system response. So we might want to alert the nervous system, kind of wake it up, increase that level of arousal. Sometimes people use the term regulate that nervous system, but we also want to think about what types of sensory supports can calm a person's nervous system. How do we down regulate that nervous system, decrease that level of arousal? And then we also know that some sensory input can be very organizing to the nervous system. So when a person's nervous system feels chaotic, or they might be highly distracted, or maybe they're stuck in a loop, bringing that nervous system together and helping them to be organized so they can move through their daily lives is really important. And this is not a one-size-fits-all approach. In fact, figuring out sensory supports can be really complex. And just as an occupational therapist doing this for 20 years, I still struggle with this to figure it out sometimes. Each person's nervous system is so unique, and each person responds differently to sensory supports. So it's really important to not take a one-size-fits-all approach here.
So people should definitely feel free to mention what supports you use, and if you use an organizing or arousing or more of a calming approach in the chat.
Yes, we definitely want to hear from you in the chat. So thanks for pointing that out, Chloe. So figuring out sensory supports, like we mentioned, is incredibly complicated. If you're even thinking and trying to help yourself or your clients, your own child, figure this out, good job. Keep going. You are definitely on the right track. And so we want to hopefully make this process just a little bit easier for you.
And when you see behaviors like hitting, when standing in line, chewing on shirts, covering ears, and not being able to sit at a table for meals, think about sensory. Often we think behaviors like those are behaviors and fail to consider that it might be a sensory component. And all of the behavior modifications you can do will not work if a person has an underlying sensory issue. Sensory accommodations will be needed.
Absolutely. And we talked about in session one how a lot of the money funded in the United States, at least, is going to helping modify behavior from an observable level. And there's very little consideration, or at least there's not enough consideration for this underlying sensory needs. So first is really about figuring it out. What does each person's nervous system uniquely need? And many times when we're supporting clients, or Chloe, she's a teacher assistant working with her students, really it's about problem solving and experimenting and figuring out what works. So when I'm supporting a client that can share their insights, I want to go right to them and ask for their insights, try a lot of different types of sensory supports, and ask them what their experience is like. How does this activity make your body feel? So we have just some examples here on the screen. Like there's a deep pressure menu that I'll invite some of my clients to go through, and we try these different activities or experiments, and they identify like if this is something that makes their body feel comfortable, and if they're able to get even more fine-tuned, is this something that makes your nervous system feel more energized? Is this something that makes your nervous system feel more focused or calm? So we really talk a lot about that. And Kim, there's an example here of a menu that you have used with some of your clients. Do you want to just share a couple of the ideas there?
Yeah, what I like to do is create some kind of menu for people to go from. The purpose is to help them be able to regulate so they're able to participate in session, and also to help them understand their body needs. So I will have them go through various movements and body actions and help them figure out if it's a calming or focusing or alerting type of action for them. And then before sessions, they will do those actions that they need.
Yeah, and I think it's important when we're talking about this planning, how important interoception is in this process. And if you remember from session one, interoception is all about connecting with how your body feels. And so for someone to be able to identify how does this activity or strategy make my body feel, interoception is definitely at play there. We also support clients that might not be able to share their insights. And in those cases, this is still very important work. And so we're offering different types of strategies and really using our observations. So you want to note changes in arousal levels. So just watch carefully how they respond to different activities that you're offering or doing with them. And I think it's important to keep in mind like that this is only making a respectful guess. Like we cannot truly understand exactly what is occurring inside of a person and what their experience truly is. Sometimes their outer appearance does not genuinely match their inside appearance. So, for example, they might be smiling and laughing, and we could take that or interpret that to mean that they're happy, they're enjoying this, but it could actually be an outward expression of anxiety or discomfort. And so
it could be masking.
It could be masking too. Thank you, Chloe. So these are respectful guesses. We're observing and watching and making respectful guesses, but always with the background of just keeping that in mind that we can't be 100% accurate when we're making these guesses.
This is something that I use a lot, with people, and it's how I figured out a lot of my own sensory needs is doing a lot of reflection. So reflect on when I do my best at specific tasks and when I struggle at those specific tasks, and really take in the quality of the environment, what I did before and after the task. If there are any vulnerabilities, such as, was it a new task? Was it a task, or was I tired? Because if you're tired and you don't get enough sleep, that could affect how you do a task. Also, take into account thoughts and emotions before, during, and after each task. Because some people aren't going to be able to tell how they might not be able to register an emotion, but they will be able to know what they think about. And you can find patterns in figuring out if it is help me out, Kelly.
Yeah, that sometimes those emotions can be very abstract, but they are able to tell you what they think about something, or what thoughts they're having during a certain activity.
And, oh yeah, now I remember. And so sometimes people might have a thought, unwanted thoughts or behaviors, and I have people chart out, like, what were you doing before? What were you doing after? What did you notice in your body? And over time, you can find patterns. And I've worked with people, and we've found patterns such as we figured out wind and air, the light touch of it is really dysregulating and causes them to self-harm. But without analyzing the different patterns, we wouldn't have come to that conclusion.
So discover and explore. If the autistic person is doing an action or behavior that is puzzling to you, do not dismiss it as non-purposeful or random. Try it yourself. I once had a teacher who lied on the floor to see what pressure I could be getting from the floor. Note what it feels like before, during, and after in your body. Think critically about how that sensation and action could be an adaptive response to their sensory world in order to meet the task at hand.
Yeah, so Chloe, the example you gave with the laying on the floor, that many times could be a very logical solution for your sensory experience at that time. Is that right?
Yeah, for getting proprioceptive input via the floor.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know sometimes if we're not taking a sensory lens to that behavior, you might just think, oh, that person's doing that to escape or avoid the task or whatever it is. So we really need to get deep and always think sensory. And
when something's not working, if you notice, I have a client who likes to bite, and in order to help him not bite himself or other people, he was given a chewy tube, but he would not use it at all. And other attempts to give him things to chew just weren't working. But if you actually physically bite your arm and see where are you feeling that, what could that be providing, and then bite a chewy tube, it's not comparable.
Very different feelings there. Do you know what ended up helping him yet?
Bite sleeve.
Bite sleeve.
So far.
Yeah.
So figuring it out, experiment with supports, provide a few options, and observe what the person seeks out or naturally does. For example, a few fidgets on the table and observe what they choose, because not all fidgets are the same or even meet the same needs. A tangle is way different than a stress ball, etc. Note the qualities of the fidget and how you can offer more of the same fidget. So similar feelings of fidget. Paint a swing and invite the person onto the swing. What do they appear to do on the swing? Do they like to swing side to side, back and forth, spin the swing, not really move it, etc.? How does it appear to impact their arousal level? Experiment with supports. Teach and demonstrate different supports and invite the person to try. Observe their reactions. Do they reach for more? Like, as you can see in that photo, I like the sand and I'm reaching for more. Do they keep going? Do they stop immediately and push it away? Does the support increase or decrease their arousal level too quickly or too much? Like, sometimes I can like something so much that I'll get too overexcited. It'll rev me up too much. Right, Kelly? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. Yep. Your energy just goes really, really high, super fast.
Really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Ensure they have exposure to the same supports multiple times before you rule it out completely, unless it's super aversive. For example, for me, if I spun on a swing once, and then that would not be something you would offer again, because I would tell you, no spin, no spin. So it's super aversive. Make supports fun and tie in interest.
Do either of you want to just talk about why it's important to try supports multiple times if it's not aversive?
Yeah, I would try supports multiple times because a support can be helpful an hour after it wasn't helpful. It can be helpful in 2 weeks. It can be helpful next year. That's why I hate getting rid of sensory supports, because you never know when you could use it or when it could be helpful.
And there are also so many different factors that go on to a person's regulation level at every moment. So you don't know, you can't control all the factors that went on before you gave that support. And sometimes some supports work on some days and some supports work on other days.
Yeah, as we're talking about this, it's just becoming like super, like, I don't know, clear in my mind that this is figuring this out. Figuring out sensory supports is a very, I guess, murky area. It requires a lot of problem solving, a lot of experimenting. And so hopefully that in and of itself is a bit reassuring. This is not an easy, thing to figure out. But
it's not black and white. It's ongoing always.
Exactly.
And it's going to take time.
Yes, but the fact that you are here and learning about this and learning just how important this work is so important. All right, we're going to talk about sensory routines and breaks.
So for me, I need to incorporate strategies into my daily routine. So in order to function optimally, I need to incorporate these strategies. For example, certain scents are very energizing to me. So in the morning, I use a tangerine scented lotion. Before the talk today, I used my tangerine lotion. I also have a diffuser with orange and peppermint. But in the evenings, I use a more calming scent like lavender or vanilla. I also wear sensory bracelets. Usually wherever I go, I'm going to have 1 or 2 different kinds of bracelets on my wrist so I can rub and touch them throughout the day in order to feed my tactile needs. I keep smooth rocks and scraps of fabric with textures in my pocket. I also have bubble wrap by my desk in case I need to have a break. And these are just some examples of how I incorporate strategies that I need throughout my day. I also need to take sensory breaks before and after certain tasks or outings in order to prepare myself for what is required of me, and so I can move on to the next thing. These are outside of my normal daily sensory strategies, so it's in addition. So like if I'm going to the grocery store, I need to do a regulating activity before and after. Part of feeding my daily sensory needs is my morning routine. And this helps me to be productive throughout the day. When I do not do it, I'm like a zombie. I call it zombie mode. I'm just really spaced out and I need William, my husband, to give me directions for simple tasks. And he does not like it when I do not regulate in the morning. Part of the things that I do is I do a lot of organizing movements, so crossing midline and right left movement, so opposite arm to opposite knee type of thing. I also do a lot of exercises that invert my head, like doing bear crawls, and also I do a lot of proprioceptive input activities like crab walks.
Tell us what kinds of strategies you like to use in the chat. For me, proactive sensory breaks really matter and make all of the difference. So I do sensory throughout my day. Here's an example sensory schedule. Before work / in the morning, 10 to 20 minutes. Therapeutic listening on the way to work. Mid-morning, 5 to 10 minutes at work or longer at home. Therapeutic listening during my lunch break. After lunch, 2 to 5 minutes of sensory, more when I'm at home versus work. Therapeutic listening on the way home. Most days. Some days I just need quiet and just to focus on the ride home. 3:30 p.m. or after work, 10 to 20 minutes of sensory. Sometimes I will relax first and find that I need more of just relaxing with a weighted blanket and end up not doing another form of sensory, but other times I need the more active sensory. I just need a little bit before I do it. Then around 7:30 or even a little later, 15 to 20 minutes, and you'll see in this picture I'm wearing my various sensory bracelets. I have a fidget, my headphones are there, and I'm coloring. This was actually taken at a conference. So I was actually fully listening to what was going on while doing everything there.
So I just want to make sure I understand. So you needed all of these sensory supports in order for you to engage and learn in that session?
Yeah. So strategies can change. That's why I like to have different tools, such as you'll notice my ball, my crash pad, the trampoline. If it wasn't on the table then, but it is normally there, or I think you only see it in some of the picture, a sensory table or sensory bins there. The shelf is stocked with things, and there's more stuff in my room. Kelly, can you help me?
Is that a swing?
Oh, yeah. That's a swing, and I have different types of swings even. So that's the Lycra swing, and I also have a normal playground swing, and then almost like a Hugglepod type swing. But that one kind of had to be taken down because I kept busting the inflatable air cushion in it, and it ended up being an expensive sensory tool because we were going through so many of these air cushions that I told my dad, I'm like, Dad, we're just going to have to switch that one out from the rotation because it's not working. And sometimes I like to have that swing up a lot.
And has this been your routine, the same routine for the last 5 years, or does it change?
No, it changes a lot. It can even change day by day even, but usually, like some days I'll want swinging more than crashing. But usually, because I seek proprioception so much, the crashing has tended to stay more than not. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you. So Kim and Chloe just wanted to share a little bit about their experience with meltdowns and shutdowns, because that's can be very related to their sensory experiences. So Kim, do you want to share first?
Sometimes I just cannot function, and pushing me will make it worse and will make it last longer. Allow me to reboot in my own way, and I will come back when I'm able. A lot of times people try to push, and that's the absolute wrong thing to do. It's important to honor if somebody needs to reboot. I want to read something that I read or that I wrote about a shutdown. And this is when there was a bunch of construction going on outside of our house. I feel disorganized and fearful from the commotion on the outside and on the inside of me. The noises, the vibrations, the feelings, the scattered thoughts, it's all too much. I need time to process, but I cannot because of all of this internal and external commotion. It goes too fast and it changes too quickly. It's unpredictable. And so I have to remain vigilant and on alert, which makes it hard to process and organize myself so I can engage and so I can complete things that I need to do. That's what shutdowns feel like. The best way to explain them is it's like suddenly being unable to control your reactions. Everything is coming on too strong and you can't block it out. You can only think about getting out of the situation no matter what that way is. You feel unsafe, attacked, like the world is suddenly out to get you. Eventually, you will be able to start to think again. But for me, I can't move. I can't do anything about what my body is doing. I just have to wait it out until I can regain control, which can take a minute, 5 minutes, an hour, or longer.
So I think it's important to note that, especially when we focus on compliance, it's not us wanting not to comply. It's not being able to always comply because our bodies simply can't. So I experienced...
Wait, Chloe, can you repeat that last part that you just said?
Yeah.
That's so important.
So on compliance, it's not wanting to be uncompliant, but it's not being able to always be compliant. Our bodies aren't always able to do something when you tell us to do them. When you tell us something that makes us upset and then tell us we have to go do it, that's hard. And sometimes I think people forget that we need that minute of processing time, of them backing off to allow for that transition. So for me, I would say I experience more meltdown than shutdown, wouldn't you say, Kelly?
Yes.
Or I'm pretty good at masking. That can be dangerous too.
Yes, but I feel like you are definitely making some gains in that area and feeling free to ask for what you need.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes these, and I wrote this about a month or so ago, sometimes these hard moments creep up on me. That surprise change I wasn't expecting can hit like a brick coming down on me. Weighing with sudden emotions and tears. I cry. Fight or flight mode engaged. Others around either don't know what to do or think or try to help. When saying stop crying just won't work. I'm too far into the meltdown storm to process those words. Or really any words. The tears and cries keep coming until a sense of calm settles over. The waves that were once rocky become smooth again. At last, as my body relaxes, the tears stop flowing and the ability to self-regulate comes back. Please be aware of these autism moments too. See that I'm trying, see deep within. See the effort. See the courage. See the bravery. See my willingness to share and help others, to try to share even when it's hard. So I wrote this after I experienced a meltdown on getting on an Amtrak train because the conductor told my staff person and I that we were sitting upstairs in because of my vision, I needed to sit downstairs, but I didn't write this on the ticket. And I immediately just went into meltdown about it. But I was able to get on the train, but the whole way up the stairs and into the seat was just total scream, cry but I was able to ask for my weighted blanket. Like, that's huge progress, wouldn't you say, Kelly?
So absolutely, yeah.
But then I felt guilty afterwards.
Yeah, that's another whole session, is the guilt that you experience after having a shutdown and meltdown, which just goes back to your point about compliance and how absolutely ridiculous compliance approaches are, because these are automatic responses of your nervous system, not you being purposefully bad or defiant.
And it's not on purpose. And it also bugs me when people say, you should know better.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, that's implying that you're doing these things on purpose, right? Okay, so let's talk about making sensory supports accessible.
So it isn't just as simple as just using a sensory support. So when I first started working longer days, I would get overwhelmed at work. I had sensory strategies that I would use at home, etc. My OT one day asked me, she said, I assume you're using these at work. I looked at her. I said, no, I'm not. She said, why not? I said, because no one told me to. Imagine like the shock, like why should someone have to tell me to? But it's not as simple as just knowing to have to use them, because there's so much into play, such as executive functioning, etc. And I couldn't just pull it out in the moment and realize, wait, I can't mask this. I need to ask for an accommodation. I need to ask for a break. So, but also because I needed help problem solving and figuring out what I needed to do at work and when I really needed to do it. So I needed a list. So someone teaching me strategies a little while ago, or saying use your strategies, what wasn't enough. So I would go, at first I would go home and just completely fall asleep, or soon as I would hit the vehicle going home, I would just self-spit. Not because I didn't know better, but because I was just so overstimulated from holding it all in. And now I take breaks and it makes all the difference. You will see in this photo, I am laying on an elementary school classroom carpet with an elementary school classroom calendar behind me, wearing my therapeutic listening headphones. That was during a break where I was listening to therapeutic listening.
So you really needed help to how to fit all of these sensory supports into your workday.
Yeah, and even how to ask my boss for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm even going to say that I work at a school and day program for individuals with autism. So the equipment and tools are even there. I just had to ask, and literally it was all there.
Yeah, which is a good lead in to communicating what you need. Do you want to talk a little bit about strategies for that?
I need a little help.
Well, do you want to talk about what's the picture here on the right?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, a week before, this was many years ago, but a week before I added this file on my communication device, I went to my therapist and I pressed, I feel anxious. And literally not even 30 seconds later, I was trying to hit myself with the iPad or bite the iPad. So I just wasn't being safe. And I had written to her afterwards, like, I don't want to do this. How can we stop this from happening? How can we make this a better experience all around? And so somehow we came up with adding something to my device. So this is what I added. The next week, I walk up to her and I press, I feel anxious. I then go into the folder on the iPad and press Theo shirt, walk to my backpack, get the compression shirt, walk to the bathroom, put it on, walk out, and that was it. Like, there was nothing. There was no being unsafe, etc., because I was able to communicate and meet the need.
Kim, do you want to talk about the picture on the left side of the slide?
Yeah, so something that I use a lot are different apps on my phone, because when I'm sensory overloaded, I'm not able to speak. So